Hello and welcome to the Doof Book Club, our monthly live stream discussion of a book chosen by you, our listeners. My name is Matt Freeman, and I'm joined as always by a posh English gentleman that I met in London. It's Scott Daly.
Hello. You got some gold in these here hills?
Definitely. I definitely have heard about there being gold here. Yeah.
Least believable plot line ever. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Hope you are having a wonderful Friday evening. I'm sure we know a lot of the folks here already, but if you happen to be listening to this for the very first time, hi. We are Doof Media, and we make podcasts all about the stories that we love. We also arrange and organize this monthly book club. Matt, explain a book club.
Well, each month, Scott and I select 5 books from a pool submitted to us by our wonderful Doof community. We put up a poll for all of our supporters over on Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia, and we let them vote on which the book they'd like us to talk about. The book with the most votes wins, and then we all read it.
Of course, that's what we normally do, because every 2 months out of the year, we take control and we pick a book ourselves, and that's what happened this month. This month, it was my turn to pick our book, and I have selected what, Matt? What have I selected?
This month, you selected The Hunter by Tana French.
What is this? What is this book about?
It's about the following. It's a blazing summer when 2 men arrive in a small village in the west of Ireland. One of them is coming home. Both of them are coming to get rich. One of them is coming to die.
Oh.
Cal Hooper took early retirement from Chicago PD and moved to rural Ireland looking for peace. He found it he's and then the summary loses all coherence at this point, and I stop reading it. Done. Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know what happened there. Is that a copy paste error on my part? It could be. I don't know. It's weird. Yeah, that's The Hunter. We're going to talk all about this book for the next hour or so. We do have some quick homework that I jumped ahead in our script here and forgot to do, because we do have to vote on next month's book, because we let our patrons vote on the book that we choose, but we also have a live poll that happens during these episodes. So there you go, right there. That poll is now live. And you'll be able to choose 2 of the 5 books. We will add the results of this poll to the existing Patreon poll, and that's how we will determine the winner of the book winner.
Book winner.
The poll will be open until the very end of the episode, so even if you show up late, that's fine. But yeah, that's there now. And Matt, let's talk about Tana French. This is our second Tana French book in 2 months. It is a sequel to the book we talked about last month, and I want to know what you thought of it. What do you think, Matt?
It's also our 4th Tana French book overall on the book club, right?
Yeah, and it's brand new. It just came out in March, so it's a brand new book as well.
Well, I had a great time with this book. I think this is the most straightforwardly fun of the Tana French books that we've read.
Interesting.
Because they tend to be like stressful and like traumatic for me. And this one, it definitely made me anxious in a few places, but it took its time in a sort of fun and games section where we were following all the twists and turns of this drama. I think it was largely because the central crux of the story is really Trey and Trey's revenge. It's not so much the murder. I mean, there is a murder, of course. There's always a murder, but that's not really the center of the story. But yeah, I had a great time with this. Really enjoyed it. I'm glad that we did this. I'm glad that we did it right after the previous one, because these two books now kind of sit in my head as one story.
Yeah. Curious what everyone in our audience thought of Tana French's The Hunter. And while you fill that in, catch up, where I think we're a couple minutes, but I don't know how long the lag on YouTube is. Sometimes it feels like it's just a few seconds, and sometimes it feels like it's above a minute. So let us know what you thought of The Hunter. And I loved this book. I really did. Surprising no one, Tana French is one of my favorite authors ever. And this was another absolute banger from her. I like what you said about, I guess I I found it pretty stressful at times. Like, I mean, Tana French does this thing, and you and I were talking about this earlier today, where like you can kind of start to see where it's going before it gets there, and where it's going is almost never a good place. Like there's just like this feeling of Cal's gonna get fucked. Like that's this feeling I had throughout so much of the book, is that the way this is gonna go is that Cal's gonna get fucked, and all these people that he's, you know, part of this community, but he's not really part of this community, and the second the chips are down, everyone's just gonna fuck him over, and that's like the feeling I had the entire time, and that was very stressful for me. That was it definitely helped turn the pages, because I was just very, very anxiously waiting what the hell was going to happen here. I didn't know what was going to happen in this book. I didn't, and I think it was it was literally like halfway through the book where I was like, "Oh, I'm surprised there hasn't been a murder." Oh, there we go, there it is. And then I honestly had no idea who the murderer was until it was revealed. I did not make that guess whatsoever.
Yeah. So this is one of the rare times that I am going to take credit for figuring out who the murderer was pretty much immediately, or rather immediately after I thought to ask the question, because when the body was found, I was just like, oh, how fun, and then I just didn't even really wonder about it until
Mm.
not too much later. But I was like, wait a minute, this seems like I should be able to figure it out. Like, and then as soon as I thought about it, the question I asked myself was like, well, who do I least want it to be, basically? And so like my first answer was like one of our three protagonists, and it
Yeah.
can't be any of them because we see their point of view. And then I was like, well, it's probably not Johnny, because that would be just too tidy. And then I was like, well, it's probably not just like some random person in the town. And then immediately I was like, the worst person for it to be would be her mom, because then if her mom gets caught, then everything is totally ruined for her. And I even had this whole scenario in my head where like she was going to lead the cops to her house, thinking that she was leading them to her dad. And then the cops just arrest her mom. Like I thought that's how it was going to end. I thought it was going to be this heartbreaking thing. And by the way, I agreed with you. Like I thought Cal was going to get totally railroaded, because I'm so used to Tana just breaking our hearts,
Hmm.
that I was like, I bet the Searcher the Hunter duology ends with Cal getting like deported. Because that just would have felt very, very Tana French to me. But no, pleasantly surprised that actually this is more of like a feel good book, honestly,
Yeah,
relatively.
it is.
Um,
I mean, it is. It is and it isn't. I mean, it's a feel good book in that, um, at least none of our core characters are maimed or screwed. They're together and happy at the end of the story, and everything kind of works out. But it's, you know, part two in this pretty like vicious takedown of this particular town, and the things that this particular town represents. Right, like this is like pretty rough on this town, pretty rough on characters like Mart, and which one of the most fascinating characters Tana French has ever written, by the way. Like I think in my mind, I want to believe that like no small part of her choosing to return to this world and the setting for a direct follow up was characters like Mart, who and just like the deliciousness of, now we have to kind of make this guy and Cal be on the same side, despite the fact that he knows what he did. And getting to see the characters comment on that thing.
mhm.
Um, I think one thing I wanted to say about this. So I think the thing that was really cool about doing a sequel in this book, and I want to hear what you have to say about this, but um, I compared this to a video game I really like called The Last of Us, and not in like tone or theme or anything. What I mean is the first Last of Us video game ends when in this a character makes like a really, really important, shocking choice, and you get to see that choice play out, and the movie ends on this kind of uncertain note. And the book, sorry, the movie, the video game ends on this uncertain note, and it's this kind of moral quagmire where everyone that plays the game gets to the end has a different take on who was right and who was wrong in this decision and everything. But it does this cool thing where it just leaves it there like that, and then the second you hear we're going back, we're doing a sequel to this game, in the back of your head you kind of immediately get excited because you're like, oh, that choice has to play out somehow. Like
Mhm.
the information that one character knows that another character doesn't has to come into the conflict of the story. And that is so exciting because that's such a delicious thing. And that's the way I felt approaching this book, because we leave the searcher with this idea that Cal has figured out who has murdered Brendan. He has told Trey that Brendan is murdered, but he is basically saying, I'm not going to tell you who did it. I need you to leave it alone. We need to all move on from this thing. And like the second I heard that a sequel to this book was happening, I was like, oh, she's not going to leave it alone.
Mhm.
There's no way she's going to leave it alone. Like this is powerful, powerful information that is at the core of the story, and and it didn't play out the way I thought it would, because I thought that that would be the driving focus of the narrative, but actually that would have been a bad call, like for to make that the driving focus of the narrative. It's like something else happens, something, and the character suddenly realizes they can use that thing to drive at this unknown that's left over from the previous story.
Yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
fucking great. I
Right.
loved that so much.
It's the return of Johnny that like reactivates her anger,
Yeah.
because it
Hmm.
reminds her like, oh, Johnny is also a victim of Art Naculty, actually, in the same way that her brother was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think one of the great sources of pleasure in this book for me was that we actually get so much of Trey's point of view, and
Hmm.
she's such a great character. She's such a distinct voice, um, distinct from any other Tana French character, distinct from any other character I've read, really, where she's a very unique character. She has her worldview that's all very self consistent, and I think part of the dramatic irony in a sense is like Cal just like constantly trying to like figure out Trey, and then when you see inside Trey's head, it's all like, oh, it's very clear. Her thoughts are all quite logical within the Trey worldview.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
not necessarily to someone like Cal. Just overall like the again, Tana French is a genius at this in particular, but just the perspective taking of various point of view characters. I feel, I don't know if this is true. No, it's not true. I was going to say that we usually stay within one POV in a Tana French book. Actually, maybe we usually stay within one POV, but we certainly have had Tana French books where we rotate POVs before.
Hmm.
But this is maybe the most POV rotation that I can recall, where it's we spend a lot of time in Trey's head. We spend a lot of time in Cal's head. Obviously, we spend a lot of time in Lena's head. Not equally, but it's pretty well distributed. And they're all such different people, and they want different things. And you feel for all of them, even when they're at cross purposes. You empathize with them.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there have been ton of French books where we had like dueling point of views, where we switch between two characters. I can't recall off the top of my head if there's ever been one where we're jumping between three people. Obviously, this is the biggest note of comparison is the first book um had we were just in Cal's head the entire time. We got to see no one else and just in Cal's head. And yeah, I loved the choice to expand that out and explore the other two characters and really get into them. And I agree with you. I loved Trey. I loved Lena. I don't know,
I think
Irish.
I think Lena. Yeah.
Okay. I loved getting in those characters' heads. I agree. Like the character of Johnny, maybe we should talk about Johnny for a little bit here, who is like one of the most detestable, annoying, sniveling pieces of shit ever. But I think Tana French characterizes him so deftly that you can see exactly what you were talking about, where it's like, oh, this is just Brendan. Like the the gold plot to get more money is as asinine and stupid as, oh, I'm just going to set up a meth lab in this abandoned building up in the mountains.
Uh-huh.
Like there's no fucking way it was ever going to work, ever. And yet like you recognize their desperation. Like you can see that this guy is no good, but you can also see that it's this place that turned him that way.
Mhm.
That like that this is a place that these type of people is just going to chew you up and spit you out. And like the only reason Trey is so far immune from this is because of Cal. and because of what Cal is doing for her. But like you can see how quickly that will all go away. Anyone ever gets pushed into a wall, and they're just going to eat these people immediately,
Yeah.
and not care about it. And like it's very easy to hate Johnny, but like I ended up just kind of feeling bad for him
Yeah.
at the end. Like the end of the book, his ending of the book is so, it's just sad to me.
Hmm.
Like when he sits down with Trey and like he's talking to her and basically like maybe for the first time in the whole novel is like being 100% forthright and honest when he's just like, look, I don't know what happened. Like things just like got out of like, you just, you know, things just happen and spiral out of control. And then suddenly, and I never had a chance. And like, and Trey's reaction just makes you so sad because she's just like, I don't understand why he's even telling me these things. And it's
Hmm.
because he's broken this relationship with her beyond repair. It's over. It's done. But like it, it's just
Yeah.
it's just sad. And they just it's got to run away and that's it. And
Yeah. Right. I mean, his greatest flaw as a character, I think, is that he lacks self-awareness,
yeah. Yeah.
which is, you know, coupled with the fact that he's been mistreated by this town, is puts him in a position where I think I did feel some amount of pity for him. I mean, he's very hateable, but he's also very
Yeah.
likable. Like that's the
Yeah.
fun that's the fun dichotomy. That's what makes him more fun than just like, oh, he's a villain, right? Like, okay,
Yeah.
fine. I can like a good villain, but like he's charming. He's quick on his feet. I love how many situations we put him in where you almost find yourself rooting for him because he's the underdog in the situation.
Mhm.
So specifically, I'm thinking of like when Cal like ambushes him on the road in the dark at night and is like being extremely aggressive, and Cal is like this huge ex cop, and you're just watching Johnny like deftly maneuver verbally and pirouette through and like constantly and you're like, I'm just excited to see what excuse he's going to come up with next,
Yeah.
because it's actually fun. I mean, even though he's like the antagonist, literally, it's fun watching him. Like it must have taken a lot of energy for the author to be like, all right, now like what does Johnny say to successfully weasel his way out of this one,
Yeah.
and then almost always like be able to come up with something pretty good. That was a lot of the entertainment for me was Johnny's BS basically.
Yeah, I mean, you need the great part about Johnny is you need him to be believably, um, you know, fun
Hmm.
in a lot of ways. Like the book requires you to kind of allow for the possibility that these people are actually being hoodwinked by him,
Hmm.
right? Like that he's so he's so like he's so
Charismatic.
there's the word I was desperately searching for, that um that he you can just be kind of drawn in by this bullshit.
Hmm.
And like it's all absurd, like the idea, like it's one of like the oldest tricks in the book of, I mean, not specifically the con they're running, but just the idea of like there's gold in these hills and we're gonna find the gold, and then like you can just see the people one at a time kind of buy into this and kind of be taken over from the by this, even if they know it's ridiculous. And part of that is Johnny's skill in manipulating them and pushing them and attacking them right where he needs to get them to buy
Yeah.
into this whole thing. And that has to work. Like it is, I think, from a writing perspective, it must be very challenging because she needs you, the reader, to know this guy's a piece of shit. She needs it. Like,
Yeah.
but the story demands he also be charismatic. He also be very convincing. He'd be a good salesman, a good talker. And those things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. But like, it's not that we need to buy into Johnny's bullshit, but we have to believe the bullshit is buy
Yeah.
intoable.
Sure. I think that worked. I mean, I'm gonna sort of hand back some of my brilliancy points that I earned by guessing who murdered your man, um, by saying it didn't really occur to me what the scam was until fairly late. Like I was like, I mean, for a while I was actually like, I was some combination of like, where are we going with this? And also like, maybe there will be gold, like maybe there is gold. And then like, there's going to be conflict over the gold. And then it wasn't, it wasn't until actually it got to the point where he was like, yeah, I just got to get a little investment from each of you. And then like, and like immediately I like realized what kind of con it was,
Uh-huh.
you know?
Uh-huh.
I don't think I realized that, um, Rushmore, whatever his name was part of the con until that's revealed. So that totally got me, honestly. Like when Trey goes to his house and he just reveal and then he changes his accent and everything and hits her and everything. That was totally shocking to me. Totally worked on me. I don't know if you guessed that he was part of the con. I kind of thought the con was a con on him, which is what Johnny wants you to think, right? So I think that's why it works. By the way, like Johnny is basically, and Tana French at the dualistic level is like, okay, you're going to be wary that Johnny is trying to con people. So we're going to admit that Johnny's trying to con people, but we're going to tell you he's conning Rushbone. And then you're gonna say, oh, okay, I get it. We the people of Art and Faculty plus the reader are conning this guy, and it's
Yeah.
not until later that you realize, like, no, him and that guy are conning you.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I can't remember if I kind of felt he was involved in some way, that the two of them were putting a con up on everyone else, because I think the first time Cal clocks him, and even the first time Trey does, it's like, this guy is way too smart. Like, when Johnny describes the type of person he is, he describes him as this aw shucks, like, rich British guy who just is in love with Ireland and wants to get back to his roots, and is like, wants to, oh, look at all the shamrocks, and
mhm.
like, and then you actually meet him, and like, that's the thing he's putting on. But like, both Trey and Cal can see underneath that right away and see he's very observant, aware, and it's just like, those things, like, it doesn't make sense that this type of guy would believe this old grandma's tale about gold under the mountain. It just didn't make sense. I honestly, like, the sequence where Trey goes to show him the pictures with the camera was one of my favorite in the book, because while I suspected he was in on it, I legitimately did not know what was about to happen in that sequence. Like, she's walking, and like, I felt like I knew enough that it wasn't going to go the way she thought it was going to go, but I really didn't know what was going to happen. And then he slaps her across the face, and I think Johnny's there at that point, right, when he
Yeah,
slaps her,
yeah,
and he doesn't do anything, and you're just like,
right.
okay. And this book did that a lot to me too. They were like, the Dublin Murder series, as much as I love them, you know, the books start, like, the inciting incident of the novel is always a body.
Mhm.
It's like there's someone dead. And so we know from the very beginning what the stakes of the story are. This guy's dead. We gotta find, like, we're gonna have to solve the murder. And there's gonna be twists and turns along the way as we meet the characters and the suspects and all the detective story stuff. But we get it, right? This book, like, throughout the whole thing, I was like, I don't know what the end game of the story is. Like, I don't know what we're gonna do. And I don't know where it's going to lead. I don't know what the end goal is. And until a body shows up, which is very late in the book, like, you don't even have that to grab onto. It's like, oh, well, we're probably going to learn who killed the person. But then in the back of my head, I was like, Tana's done this before, though, where we just don't get to find out what happened. And so I was wondering if that would happen too, and I just didn't know. But
Yeah,
I thought that was like the way this book weaves around this general idea, like, just, I thought was great.
yeah. Speaking of the ending there, I for a second there I was like, are we just gonna not? Are we gonna make it clear to the reader that it was her mom, but not have her, but just leave that there and not actually
Hmm.
address it? And no, I mean, I think there had to be a catharsis where,
Yeah.
so the other thing that made me realize it was the mom, by the way, is just like everything is intentional, right, in a story, and like her mom is this character who's always there, and like her absolute like psychological exhaustion and the tension she's emanating out of her body are like repeatedly emphasized, and like, so that's why as soon as she occurred to me as a suspect, I was like, oh yeah, she's totally ready to murder someone. She would absolutely murder someone, if she thought it would get her out of the situation.
See, I got totally hoodwinked, because, yeah, I just, I just wasn't paying enough attention to her. Like, honestly, I
Mm,
wasn't. And that's one of the things she says in her whole big reveal. And I was like, no, you're right. You're right. I wasn't paying enough attention to you. And yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. The thing you said about how you kind of figured it out is like, oh, who would the worst possible person be? I think it's weird. I never thought that. I never like had a moment in this book to sit back and be like, oh, I wonder who did it. I mean, there were moments where it was like, where I thought like it can't just be the town, like someone in the town again,
mhm.
because like they can't just that's the killer again. Is the town? The town killed Brendan, and the town
Yeah,
killed this guy too.
right.
Um, but no, I never thought of her. I never thought of her.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny. It's because you don't. It's because you don't think to ask. Really,
Yeah.
like
Hmm.
because that's what I mean when I said like it took me a minute to even think of the question, to like formulate the question of like I wonder
Yeah.
who killed him. And whereas in a normal murder mystery, that's the specific thing that the characters are trying to solve because they're the
Hmm.
detectives. And it's
Yeah.
funny because like Cal couldn't care less who killed him. Like absolutely never occurs to Cal to even wonder, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And in fact, the detective who's the one who's trying to figure it out is like a kind of antagonist.
Hmm.
Speaking of the detective, John brings up a fun topic, which is that like the detective is able to sort of stir up the town and cause them to start, cracking. And John says he was surprised and amused by how easily they cracked. I was mostly amused. Like I thought that was like the fun and game section to me. Like you
Yeah.
actually get to see Trey enjoy something for once. Um,
Here's something I will say about Tana French novels in general. In the world of Tana French, detectives, especially murder police, are some of the most skilled, talented, effective people to ever walk the face of the earth.
mhm.
Like she just has a clearly a great reverence for that specific type of work. That she just makes it work very, very well. Like even in the other Dublin murder books, where the detectives are like really fucked up and like not doing their best, like when they really just sit there and turn it on, they're just remarkably effective at what they do. And part of the fun of those books is getting to read those and see that. And so yeah, like it was totally in line with me that this just random detective comes in. Cal is like, I like this guy. He's good. He's good. And he wins. He just wins at everything he's trying to do. Like he just because yeah, in this world, detectives are gods
Yeah,
basically,
it,
and they will just enter a space and control it.
yeah. They're Bene Gesserit within this world. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I like that.
yeah. I love it. I love it. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's competence porn, right? That's my favorite
Yeah.
thing about these books. Very a lot of the time, it's like the rapport or lack thereof between like the two detective partners is a huge source of the stakes. I wanted to talk about that quite a bit actually, the stakes, right? And
Hmm.
we were talking earlier about like I'll speak for myself. Like Tana French books can be so intense for me that is borderline too much. Like the story, right? The origin story for me is that I read In the Woods. It's like I don't know, 15 years ago or something, and it just like emotionally devastated me. It was like it was one of the most impactful books I've ever read from like that point of view, from like the effect on me emotionally point of view, not from you know what I mean. And like I've Tana French books tend to have a similar effect where it's like she's so good, she's so unusually good at making you really invested in these characters, really caring about what's going to happen to them. You're really, really closely following, like, what is it exactly that I want to see happen or not happen? And you desperately want to either see that thing happen or not happen.
Yeah.
And she twists the knife. And in some of the books, I mean, that's the thing about In the Woods is she takes that book and she just guts you. Um,
Hmm.
and like maybe that's like why I'm always like afraid of her because I'm like, is this gonna be that again? Because I'm always prepared for it to be a downer ending, and sometimes she gives us like a partial downer ending, like we don't, this bad thing happens, but then there's this mitigating factor. But I just find her to be so good at that. And I was very worried about what was going to happen to Trey. Like it just seemed kind of like you said earlier. I was just so sure that Cal was going to get screwed. I was so sure that Trey was going to make some choice that was going to irrevocably screw up her life. Totally plausible to me that Trey could have died in the fire, and I would have been heartbroken. Of course, that didn't
Yeah.
happen. I just wanted to air this idea that, like, Tana French, out of all the authors we read on book club, the reason we keep coming back to her, she knows exactly how to hook you with the stakes, and then just lead you around by the nose and do whatever she wants to with you.
I completely agree. It's so fun. I know torturous is the correct word, but I often have so much fun with it, and yeah, just never knowing exactly how things are going to resolve and what state our characters are going to be left in, and yeah, I mean, this is probably honestly one of the most optimistic, brightest departure points for our characters in a Tana French book. Their relationships are not completely destroyed. They seem to all be doing well. Um, so everything worked out really. So
Yeah. I even loved, I mean, there was sort of one thing I wanted to pick out, just a very particular beat that almost could have passed without notice, but for some reason I thought it worked super well, because it has to do with his relationship with Lena. And it's I love how it's set up and how it pays off, because it's like she sees the detective, and she's sort of playing this game of cat and mouse with the detective, where she's basically trying really hard to make it seem like Trey just sort of haplessly made this mistake by giving false evidence. Um,
mhm.
and the detective is playing cat and mouse with her, and it's a fun, sort of interrogation scene,
Yeah.
where the detective is pretending not to be taking the situation seriously, and she sees this like predatory gleam, this like lustful gleam in the detective's eye when like he sees his prize within reach, and she thinks, like, I wonder if that's the way Cal was when he was like on the scent of a case. And then the way this pays off, of course, is that she asks Cal, like, how did it feel when you thought you had a case locked in? And Cal's like, oh, I guess it just felt like I had fixed something that needed fixing. And it's like, which is like a
Yeah.
totally different vibe. And
I think he said relief, right?
yeah,
Is one of the
relief.
words he used. Yeah.
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 Which is wonderful. And it like makes you happy, and like you see Lena realizing, like, yeah, I picked the right guy.
Yeah.
And it's
Uh-huh.
very like, I don't know, it's one of those things where it affects you a lot more than it feels like it should, almost, because she's
Yeah.
connected all these ideas together so well under the surface.
One of the things that's absolutely true about these books, and the thing that I was worried about when she kind of has now left the Dublin Murder Squad series behind, maybe she'll return to it again, maybe not, I don't know, is if we lose the point of view of a detective, some of my favorite way about how she writes goes away. But the truth is, in a Tana French book, everybody's a detective,
Mm-hmm.
really. At least for point of view characters, everyone is hyper observant. Everyone is noting and clocking how people are reacting to certain things. It's not just what they're saying; it's how they're saying it. It's how they're holding themselves while they say it. All these incredibly intricate details. Everyone does that. That's just the world these books operate in. And so, like, it doesn't. Yes, the detectives, the actual detectives in the story, are like better at it than anyone else usually, but it all still happens. And that's a great example of it right there, where she clocks something in him that the book doesn't need to really come out and say directly to us, but we understand, and we are given an understanding at the same time our character is given an understanding. And that's just fun to read, man. It's just fun to read all across, like, that kind of detailed character interaction, because really all these books are, at the end of the day, is characters sitting in a room verbally sparring with each other. Like, there are action sequences of a sort in them, like there's a big fire in this one. There's but effectively it's just characters, it's just interpersonal drama via dialogue, essentially. And how does she make that work so effectively? It's the strength of her writing. It's just what she does really, really well.
Yeah. That's incredibly hard, by the way. Like, it's probably
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
thing that I'm least good at is the thing that she's the best at, right? And that makes her so singular. Um,
Yeah.
Something Mary says that she's not sure that she trusts Trey yet, and it's like, I think that's the fun thing about Trey, is she's this character that we love via Cal,
Hmm.
but we also kind of feel this anxiety about her. Like, what is she gonna do? Like, I'm worried about her. Um But I think what this story is like, this is a coming of age story for Trey, actually. And I mean, it's quite explicit, as explicit as anything is in these books, when she has this screaming argument with Lena on their walk together, and you see her come to an actual realization in that moment of like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I have to be responsible for other people's well-being, and I have to
Mm-hmm.
think about the outcomes, and like, and in fact, this is what's going to differentiate her from her brother and her father, who are constantly just like scamming. I mean, fundamentally, I think that's the thing about Trey, is she has that streak in her too,
Yeah.
where she's like a caged animal who's just flailing to do things to try to get out of the situation and causing damage in doing so. And what we see is her embracing um, adulthood in a way that neither her brother nor her father ever have.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do still think the Brendan of it all isn't over yet.
Mhm.
Like I think that's like I have no idea if she plans to return to the series or not, but I do think one of the interesting choices made here is that it's not like, she's excited about getting her revenge, and she sees this opportunity and she seizes on it, like you said, like in a very Brendan, in a very Johnny like manner, just headlong into this without really thinking of what the consequences of, and thinking how it's going to play out, and thinking all these things. And then she is kind of brought back into reality by the people that love her. But that doesn't mean like she's just over the Brendan thing yet. Like I think there isn't there like a small shift where she feels a little bit differently about it. At one point, like I think it's maybe after the fire kind of burns where his resting spot possibly could have been, when the whole mountain kind of catches fire. So there's been a shift there, but I don't know. I still think there's opportunity there if it wanted to explore it. So yeah, I mean, I think she is growing up. I think it's been great seeing her grow up. But there's still potential for drama there if we want it.
There is, yeah. I would bet that she just finds a way to deal with it and then leaves the town eventually when she grows up. Like, I would
It's the
bet that if we
Yeah,
continue on with Trey,
it's the
um,
best possible outcome.
because like there's no way she's going to find the actual person who did it, and I think that she has grown past the point of just getting a generalized revenge upon the town.
Hmm.
If only because that would cause blowback against people she cares about. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel like we left things in a good resolved position, to the point where I'd actually be surprised if there was a third Trey and Cal book. Not saying I
Yeah.
don't want one. It's just I don't know. It doesn't seem clear to me what that would even look like.
Hmm. So question I see here that we've got a couple times from people is the detective in the story from the Dublin Murder Squad series. He is not one of the protagonists from those books. It's been too long since I've read them to remember if he's one of kind of the side characters mentioned in when characters are in the squad room. But he's not one of the main characters, and he's not one of the partners of the main character. So he's either completely new, or he was just like kind of mentioned offhand in one of the books. So that's the
Yeah,
answer. So,
I don't remember. I don't even remember the guy's name, so I can't even search it. Um, so
I don't think I knew either.
there's always something a little supernatural, right? Always something vaguely supernatural in these books, and I kind of liked how it was used this time, where there's actually the recurring idea that like there's the Irish folks talk about like the fairy, but they don't really take it seriously, but they also kind of
Hmm.
take it seriously. And then whenever Trey is out on the mountain, she's aware of this presence watching her, which I think is a supernatural, spirit. Could be related to her brother, could be just the Fae, right?
Hmm.
And then as soon as she abandons her revenge and makes it clear that she's not going to get revenge on these pesky humans, the magic turns against her, and she immediately twists her ankle and needs to be rescued and everything.
Yeah.
And I like that. Like, it's fun to me because it's the merest whiff of the fantastic, just enough spice to make it kind of fun, not so much that it makes you feel like, what the hell, what's happening? I really I enjoy that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, these books have always operated on a small level of magical. Like, I think the Secret Place is the one that I think goes most textually into, yes, magic is a real thing that exists in this universe. Almost too far,
Uh-huh.
but I think like that was supposed to be a metaphor for the power of friendship between young girls, right? So
Yeah.
like that's I see it. This is I agree with you, the perfect amount where you could just look the other way at all this and just say, oh, this is all in Trey's head. This is just a way that she feels. But I loved it. I loved it. Yeah, I love this feeling of power and wanting to be part of this revenge, and the land wanting revenge on these people, and this town, and the corruption that exists amongst it. Like that's the man. Like this place sucks. Like it's beautiful and it's wonderful, and there's a part of you that knows exactly why Cal likes it here, but then it's just like, God, these people, these fucking people, man. Like there's the way every fucking conversation with Mart is like you're talking to him about three different things at the same time,
Uh-huh.
and you have to be aware of it because he's just never going to shoot you straight because he's always got an angle. He's always playing a thing. He's always trying to warn you or feel you out for something. Like it's just like, this is exhausting, man. Like I want to get away from this place too.
But there's also something alluring about it, right?
Yeah,
I
no,
think that's,
100%.
and I mean, I love how it's described as this like web that people get pulled into. Um, we haven't talked much about Lena. I think this is a perfect place to talk about her
Yeah.
because she's this character who never actually left the town, but refuses to allow herself to be of the town, but kind of fails at that, right? Because
Mhm.
it's like, well, she has these relationships with people. She like her sister is the town gossip. I thought that was a great choice, by the way. Just
Mhm.
having this character who's trying to be apart from things, but her sister is the center of everything, and it causes this constant tension between them. And then in order to um I love how it's like, by caring about this one person, just caring about Trey, that like opens her up and makes her vulnerable, and now she's like pulled into it, and now she's in the whole mess with everyone, and she, at the end of the book, she's taken in Trey's whole family, because that like it just needs a crack to get in, and then it'll suck you right into the web
Yeah.
of the town. um I think it's a really interesting take on towns. We talked last time about how Stephen King also likes to write about evil towns, and I think this is definitely a more nuanced and less condemning take on towns. Like
Yeah.
the Arnaculty is a very flawed place, but it's not evil. I think.
I mean, it, it's a different way of approaching that same idea,
Hmm.
right? Like it is kind of fascinating to compare these things directly to each other because it is a look through a window into a certain place that is very different from the type of place that I've ever lived. And it, yeah, I think it is not condemning ultimately entirely.
Hmm.
It is, there's a lot of things to condemn, but I mean, I think it one thing we get to see through Cal and the change that Cal has undergone throughout these two stories is the way this place kind of makes you compromise a little bit.
Hmm.
That Cal is this character we saw from the first book, as he has the one thing he says to her, the advice he gives to her is, you have to have a code. You have to have a code, and you have to decide what constitutes crossing it, and what doesn't. And then we see in this book that that starts
Yeah.
he starts losing that a little bit, and then suddenly like he's with the group while they're not only while they're planting the gold, but then he's with them while they're burying the grave, and he himself is not 100% sure if we're just scaring this guy or actually going to
Yeah.
murder him, and he's still there. And it's just like
Yeah.
it's because we see how easy it is for someone like Cal, a person who has this rigid moral code, to get like kind of swept up in the quagmire or the spider web, as you put it, of this place. Like it makes it so you can't condemn it entirely, right?
or like a bog, if you will.
Yeah.
Um,
No. Yeah. Perfect.
yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
No, you're right. I mean, I think it's first of all, yeah, love the moment when he's like, "Were y'all gonna kill that guy?" And he's like, "You mean were we all gonna kill that guy?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, um, yeah, I think, I mean, we see Cal compromise, we see Lena compromise. Um, it is a place that compromises people. But so the thing, and this isn't a fresh point for us, but like when either Stephen King or Tana French talk about small towns, that's just a lens on which to talk about humans and
Mhm.
people and humanity.
Yeah.
So like when you talk about like two sheep farmers getting into a never ending feud over like a sheep that crossed a line and fell into a hole and died, like uh, that's not about our naculty. That's the way people are. Yes, people totally are like that the
Mhm.
world over. And if you put people in a situation where they feel like um their community, their status in the community depends on a certain outcome, then they just become vicious little monsters. And that's something this book has a lot of fun with. Um,
Yeah.
what was the bit where they talk about the grudges? Yeah, I love Mart's
Mhm.
kind of pontificating about grudges, and he's really talking about Trey in a very elliptical fashion. But just it was that also struck me as being a very Stephen King take on things.
Yeah.
Just the idea of grudges.
Matt Mart is a murderer
He was
who
involved in a murder.
he's a murderer who hid a body of the main character's daughter surrogate favorite older brother.
Uh-huh.
And yet, and yet,
He's
and
delightful.
yet,
I love him.
he's delightful. He is.
Yeah, he's so hard to hate.
And like I
Yeah.
love like that it's a perfect examination of Cal's like twisting, getting trapped in the bog nature of this whole thing is like when he's like, I really don't like being on the same side as Mart on all this, but I'm still gonna do it, and
Yeah.
I'm still gonna like go to the bar and shoot the shit with him and have a genuinely good time because like when he gets engaged, great sequence, loved it all.
Uh-huh.
These people, these men, are monsters that they killed a child accidentally,
Uh-huh.
sure, but they killed a child, and he's having a good time with them. They're
Yeah.
shooting the shit. He's having fun. It's all fake, but he's despite himself, is having a good time.
Yeah. It's all water
And
under the bridge.
yeah, like that's great because that's complicated. It's messy, and there's no like, how do you feel about it? I don't know, man. I don't feel good, but I understand it because he's got to live here, and these are the people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yep. Um it's great. I love yeah, I mean that's when people are charismatic and funny, we will forgive them a lot. I think that's the lesson of Mart. So maybe my reading comprehension is just poor. Actually, I'll phrase this as a question. Do you think why do you think Cal really went in on them went in on their gold putting gold in the river scheme?
Oh, so I kind of just took him at his word with that. Like when he just says he just wanted to keep an eye on it?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of asked it in a provocative way because I agree that he just wanted to keep an eye on it, but I did wonder off and on throughout the course of the book, like, does he kind of want to be involved in this too, though? Like, does he? It's kind of hard to have a code all the time, right? I don't know. Like, I think maybe I was just off base with that, but I kind of enjoyed the idea that I think what it was for me is that Trey sees him putting the gold in the river, and we see from Trey's point of view that it doesn't even occur to Trey that he would be there,
Yeah.
um, like uh, to be part of their scam. Like she's like, he must have his own purposes. And so I think one thing that crossed my mind is like, what if one thing we're exploring is Cal is just not the superhero that Trey wants him to be. I don't think we ended up going that way though. I think Cal honestly does have a very strong code that he adheres to pretty well, except when it comes to protecting Trey, and then he's willing to kind of cross the line a little bit, I think.
Yeah, and he would have totally killed Johnny, and he would have totally killed the British guy too. Like I think he totally would have done it if he needed to. Yeah. I agree with you. I did think it several times we were going to maybe, take part of this is taking Cal off of his pedestal. It seemed like we were going that way, and then we really didn't. I actually think what it ends up being, what that sequence ends up being in a really interesting way that I didn't see coming, is you're exactly right. It's more about Trey than it is about Cal.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one important thing that happens is she sees him there, and what we maybe in our head immediately would think is like, oh, she's going to get mad at him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be the splintering of their relationship. She just immediately is like, oh, he probably has an ulterior motive. And compare that when she hears about Lena and Cal engaged at the end of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, doesn't immediately be like, oh, they probably got some ulterior motive. That she immediately goes to, oh, I've been betrayed. How could they do this to me? How could they leave me out? And it takes Lena going, hey, come on, think about it for half a second. Like,
Mm-hmm.
is that us? And would you not have been the first person we'd tell if that really happened? And I think to me, it's more about Trey's descent into this desire for revenge, that she's kind of losing herself a little bit, losing herself to the Johnniness of it, away from the Calness of it, than it is about, watching Cal falter and fall.
Yeah. I think I totally agree. We're seeing her distance herself from Cal, not just, physically, but also like she's losing track of her own code, and she's great character work.
Oh, it's all good. All of them are great. Every character in this book, like even I'm blanking on the British guy's name right now.
Keep calling him Crowdmore or Crushbone or something.
The problem is I have Rushmore in my head because of the movie Rushmore, and I know that's not it. But
it's what's funny is that's not even his name. So,
well, yeah, I forget. Was it Brady? Maybe
Rauschenbaum or Patty Englishman.
I'm just
that's
gonna
right.
Call
John.
him Rushmore because yeah. I mean, even he was a pretty interesting character, right? Like we didn't really get to see too much of the real him, but we got to see enough, and I thought that was pretty great too.
Yeah. I think it was just Rushbaum, maybe. Rushbaum. I think that's what it was. I don't know. It's gonna be funny listening to this later and listening to us totally fail to
who cares?
One of the central characters' names.
He's
over
dead.
and over.
Who cares?
Yep. It's like that. That was one of the funniest things about the book is you come across the dead body and you're just like, oh, good. Like there's, I don't know. Just like I found my reaction. It was almost like a eucatastrophe, actually, that he'd been murdered. I was like, oh, that solves so many problems.
Yeah. No,
I mean,
you're right.
It creates new problems, obviously, but we were just so worried about how we were going to deal with this guy. Now he's just dead. Royal Tenenbaum. Yes. Thank you, Heller.
Yeah. I agree. It was great, except for, of course, the problem. Like it's great in that it stops Trey's revenge plot, or it messes with, and like we feel good about that. We're like, oh, good. I don't actually want you to get revenge because I know this is going to blow up in your face. So yeah, I don't know if I'd go so far. I feel like Tolkien's rolling in his grave and calling a murder a eucatastrophe. But
sure. The immediate moment when you discover the body, you're like, you are like, oh, this just means we don't have to resolve all the problems that centered around this guy. They're just, Johnny doesn't have to worry about paying him back. So this, and the scam is obviously off now because the guy's dead. And like so many plot threads were just truncated, and it feels nice and clean. And then I think one fun thing we do is we just know that like Trey just like sits there by the body for like half an hour or something,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't really know why. But I think I assumed, I believe correctly, that she was thinking basically
Mm-hmm.
like, all right, how do I play this so that I can still get revenge on everyone? And only after she's sort of come up with a plan does she move on and report the body. Um,
Yeah, and I loved Cal kind of clocking how she was dealing with finding a body, and
mhm,
like, the I don't know, like, part of his inability to read her is like, she doesn't seem like she's in shock. She doesn't seem like she cares at all.
uh-huh,
Should I be worried about this?
yeah.
It's all really good. Like, all of it's really, God, this is such a good book, man. I was thinking earlier today of like where I would rank this amongst her books as a whole, and like that's such a difficult thing for me because they're all so different. But I enjoyed the hell out of this thing.
hmm Me too. Yeah, no, it's funny. When we started this conversation, I had that thought on the back of my head of how to rank it, and I have no clue where to rank it. I think it was, like I said, it was more fun than the previous book, but that doesn't mean it was a better book. Might have been a better book. I'm not saying it wasn't a better book. It
I
was.
think it was more fun in just that, like, like we know these characters and getting to revisit them, and it's like, it's like, oh, it's Novine again. Oh, she's she's being her way. It's
Mhm.
funny. Like the whole them pretending to get engaged thing is so fun, and then like the way everyone is reacting to them is so fun,
Yeah,
and and they just and then like the conversation between Mart and her, in which Mart knows it's not a real engagement, which means when Mart is, fucking with Cal the entire time, he knows it's BS too, and it's a strategic move, and yet he's just going to continue fucking with him because nothing Mart says is ever straightforward ever. It's really delightful, really really delightful.
yep.
Oh, Witch Elm, I I guess I didn't like it very much because I have no memories of Witch Elm. I read it, of course, but like if you paid me a $1,000,000, I could not tell you what that book was about.
And I haven't read it because I heard that it was bad. So, or then I don't know if I even heard that it was bad. I think I just heard that it was not up to her normal standards.
Oh, I apparently did a review for it on Goodreads.
Well, that'll help you remember.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not going to read this right now because I'm on a live stream, but I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. So there you
That's it's pretty bad for you. That's
go.
like
It is.
your lowest score ever, 7 thumbs up. Um, yeah, cool.
Yeah. Anything else you wanted to say about Tana French in general and the hunter, Matt?
I don't think so. I think we hit all my little points that I wanted to hit. Um, as usual, this is a recommend from me. Maybe I'll go ahead and read the remaining Tana French books now, since I don't think we'll be doing one for a book club for a while, probably.
Yeah, we'll probably take a little bit of break after doing 2 in a row. Yeah, Mary mentions the prose. I mean, of course, just continues to be excellent, like just across the board. Like this woman can write like incredibly. Just like we've talked about it already, but just the way she writes the dialogue, I think, continues to be great. But then she'll switch from these incredibly incisive, like tense, wonderful dialogue sequences to just this beautiful, flowery, like wise saying about the nature of the world and
Yeah,
life and the struggles of mankind, and it's just like, fuck, how do you do that? How do
yeah,
you do both of these things at the same time? And it works on me
right.
perfectly.
Well, and balances it and makes it feel like it's of the same voice, even though it's shifting. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like maybe previous. I think maybe it was on the likeness where we sort of said like she verges on the purple, but in a way that I just love. I think that was basically our agreement, was like
Hmm.
she can get pretty flowery, but I just love it. Like I don't there's nothing negative to it at all. It's like the floweriness is all deserved and it works. I think what's interesting, like contrasting this to the likeness, for example, or to the secret place, is like it's like 20% less flowery, but just as like well crafted.
Mhm.
It's like maybe more precise, you could say, or it it didn't draw attention to itself at all. Like
Yeah.
I barely I I can't even remember specific instances of prose that I loved, and yet I remembered repeatedly thinking like, man, that's great. So, which I think is, a sign of mastery, actually.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think one thing we should talk about is something we didn't talk about with The Searcher that we should have, is that essentially this book and the series is written to be kind of westerns.
Mm.
And one thing, my version of the book that says exclusive to Barnes and Noble, so I don't know if you got it, Matt, because it's exclusive to Barnes and Noble, is an essay that Tana French wrote. It's like a 4-page essay kind of about the writing of the Searcher and the Hunter a bit, and basically she says she read Lonesome Dove, a book that we really need to read, by the way.
Yeah.
Really need to do a book club on Lonesome Dove.
Yeah.
She read Lonesome Dove and then like fell down a rabbit hole of Western literature and just read a whole bunch of Western literature, and then kind of said, I want to do a little bit of that. And so she kind of took the idea of Western American literature and Western Irish,
Uh-huh.
because the slightly to the western part of Ireland, and she married those two ideas together in these books, and so yeah, with that in mind, the idea of Cal as the outsider is like the perfect western. The outsider comes to town and shakes up the town. He's
Yeah.
he's the Shane. Like this is like it's so transparently obvious that I'm like mad I never thought about it. Like even the name The Searcher comes from one of the most famous westerns of all time, John Wayne's The Searchers, right? So
Yeah.
like it's so obvious in there, but it didn't occur to me
Yeah.
at all until after last month's book club.
He comes into the saloon and he gets a gun
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he's the sheriff.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I get it. Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah.
But with that in mind, like the Searcher clearly western, like it's got
Mhm.
western all over it. So what about the Hunter though? That's it's not the same, right? It obviously takes place in the same world. It's the same author, but she's not, I don't think, as heavily channeling the Western archetype stuff here.
Yeah. I'm trying to think like, I guess, the fast talking con man is a Western archetype, but I'm having trouble
Yeah,
thinking of a specific Western story that really has this kind of shape to it.
yeah,
Um, I mean, the idea of a gold rush is a somewhat Western idea, right? Or a
sure, yeah, yeah.
gold town,
Gold fever.
gold fever, and people being prepared to throw each other under the bus for a shot at the gold, and conning each other and everything. I feel like, yeah, I mean, it's a sort of different subgenre. It's one I'm probably less familiar with, but I can see it fitting in that
Yeah,
way.
yeah. I mean, one thing. Thank you, Heller, for pointing that out. With a thing that I definitely wrote down right here. It's right here. To talk about was the thing that's established at the very beginning of this book, which is the heat wave. That
Yeah.
this is like an abnormally hot summer, and the weather and the drought and everything as a reflection of this rising level of tension in the town. I think was great, and that is a very Western thing as well. Um, I think the first book, and this is kind of in French's own words a little bit here. The first book is about an outsider, right? Like it is an outsider coming to a new place and dealing with being an outsider in this new place and learning about what it means to be in this new place. Cal's not an outsider anymore, kind of.
Hmm.
And that's the interesting thing about this book is all three of our main characters are technically not outsiders anymore,
Hmm.
but they technically still are. They're
Hmm.
in this liminal space between being a part of the community and not being a part of community. The Trey technically lives here, but Trey is kind of treated as different from the rest of them. Lena is technically born here and grew up here, but she is trying to set herself aside as
Hmm.
different from these places. And Cal is learning that as much as he has become a part of this community, is still not really a part of the community. And so they're all three of these characters in this. I think in her essay she calls it limbo. They're in a limbo between being an outsider and being a welcome presence in the community. And so I wonder, I wonder, like, in that regard, if there is going to be a trilogy here, then the third book about this town is the one perhaps from the perspective of the true insider, right?
Mhm.
Like you have an outsider book, you have a kind of halfway in between book, and then you have, oh, let's get this. It's time for Mart's book. We're gonna see inside the head of good old Mart. I don't know. I don't know. I think that's intriguing to me.
Yeah, sure. That's very interesting. I mean, that's at least enough to get me started thinking about potential directions we could go if there was a third book. Like it
Hmm.
just, all you have to say is like, well, what other sort of Western tropes could we invoke in the Ardnacolty context? And then yeah, there's all sorts of fun you could have there actually. Um,
Yeah.
hmm,
Let me just look up a list of Western tropes.
Gotta have a stagecoach robbery, obviously.
A railroad coming through town and changing everything up. What if there's a big highway coming through?
Yeah, and they're gonna buy people's sheep farms and pave them over.
Yeah. A bounty hunter? Does the detective coming to town count as a bounty hunter?
Kind of. That kind of felt like that trope. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
there need to be more bounty hunters.
There's generally
Yeah, I want to see.
bank
I want to see
robbery.
more of that. Bank robbery. Yeah, I don't know. It's got to
Cal
be.
robs a bank for trade. That would be quite the character shift.
That's how he becomes an insider to Ardnacolty. Is he has to help with the bank robbery for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, I like that, John. One of the central tropes of westerns is transience in the town and culture are changing, and we do see that. I mean, yeah, no, that's actually perfect. That's the most man. That clicks so well because Ardnacolty is like this. It's like this frontier town, but obviously it's not actually. It's this really old town, but it's like the progress is catching up on it. That's such a Western trope. Totally right.
Yeah, yeah. No, I like it. I like it. Um. Well, we'll see. We'll see if we come back to this. So, I guess, what's your thought, Matt? Like, there was, if I'm being entirely honest with myself, there was a part of me that got a little mad at Tana French when she stopped doing the Dublin murder books, where I was like, no, I want you to keep doing this thing that you're really good at that I love, which is like never a good, it's never a good opinion to have about a writer, right? It's like they need to be free to explore their own things and do different things, and trying to keep them trapped in in their same thing is like always bad.
Yeah.
Um, and so, like, I do, there's part of me that says, hey, you've taken a little bit of break off, do you want to see how things are going in Dublin? Just see how things are going in Dublin with those detectives. Is the chief still that same asshole? Like, how are things going? Check in with them, please. um but also, I'm just kind of delighted with anything she's gonna do.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we just talked about this on our discussion of Doom McKee is that the best authors are constantly reinventing themselves, and as soon as you feel like they've mastered something, and you're like, they found their lane. This is what they do. They churn out murder mysteries set in Dublin. That's exactly the point that they've got to reinvent themselves, or else they become stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't mind at all. Like I feel like maybe I only say this because I know I have another Dublin murder book in the can that I haven't actually read because I've been saving it. But I don't feel like I need any more of that specific thing from her. I want to see what else she can do, what else she can stretch into. Because yeah, I mean, just let's step back from it. Like, what is she a master of? Like, yeah, she's a master of like the detective interrogation scene, but that's a narrow slice of what she's really, really good at, which is these complicated human dramas where this guy knows this, and she knows this, and he wants this out of her, but doesn't want to let her know that he knows this, and that can be a context across so many different types of drama, and so she's not even limited to stories that involve murders. Really, I would like to see her do something without a dead body in it.
Impossible.
Yeah,
Don't be ridiculous.
I think, like, that's the thing though, is there doesn't need to be a dead body for her to show off her skills, is all I mean.
No, I agree. I agree with that. And maybe like she's kind of working her way up to it, like we're moving further and further away from the murder police each time, perhaps.
Yeah.
Although we had a murder police from Dublin come in this book, so maybe that's a bad example.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't know. Yeah. I'm here for it. Like the end of the day, if this is just a 2-book series and we're moving away from this into something else, I'm for it. If we're going to do another one of these, I'm for it. If we're going to go back to Dublin and do another murder detective story, I'm for it. Anything. I'm just here for it at this point. Like I don't think, like, we were just talking about how I gave The Witch Elm a 3 out of 5. I kind of want to revisit that book because I really do feel like I was just influenced by being irrationally angry that I wasn't getting a new Dublin murder book. And I want to give that another chance, but I hope maybe she feels the freedom to get to do that and explore other things and not be pigeonholed. I'm sure her publisher is like really wanting some of those Dublin murder books though.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly wouldn't mind if she wrote more Dublin murder books. It's up to her, obviously. I think that her powers extend far beyond, being really good at writing detective POVs.
Yeah, like I said, every person in these books are detectives.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That's just the way she writes, and it's great. So, gosh, thank you, Tana, for 4 episodes of this club, and that I absolutely loved.
Yeah, that was awesome.
All right. Before we end everything, we do have to do some results. I am going to be shutting down the poll. Let me share the link again one more time. We'll just do some quick refreshes here. Matt, do the Jeopardy noise.
Excuse me.
Yeah, you're going really high with it. I don't think it was that high.
It's pretty high.
Just take it down an octave. It's fine.
See,
there you go.
That was like 3 octaves.
I don't know, music. You could have just said it.
Where's my piano? Where is my piano? I lost my piano, everyone.
Matt? Pianos are large.
I got a small one that I keep
keyboard?
in here. Yeah, it's a keyboard. But I want to call it a piano right now.
Okay.
It's more fun that way.
All right. It looks like no more votes are coming in, so we're locking it down. So next month's book, by a pretty narrow victory, well, not as narrow as I thought, by a 5-vote victory, is going to be Brandon Sanderson's Tress of the Emerald Sea. There was a lot of very passionate Brandon Sanderson like campaigning over the course of this week. I don't know why y'all keep making us read books we're probably not going to like, but sure, I'll read another Brandon Sanderson book.
I mean, I think people were saying this is like the best book he's written or something, and
sure, I'll read
it. We'll probably enjoy it, and then
I'm sure I'll enjoy it. I always enjoy these books. I just get to the book club and I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, people want to talk about it. That's cool. It's fine. It's gonna be funny when we both love this book.
I mean, and very possible, and I'm ready to. Right? I'm ready to. So
yeah, no, I'm not. We're being a little funny. I don't hate Brandon Sanderson. I feel the actual answer is that I read so much like fantasy when I was younger that I feel a very strong need to stretch beyond fantasy, and so every time we go back to fantasy, just any fantasy, not just Sanderson. I'm a little bit like, oh, I'm regressing, I'm shrinking, I'm turning back into a teenager. But it's okay, it's fine. I'll
Yep.
get over it.
Yep. So that is going to be next month's book, Brandon Sanderson's what was it again? Tress of the Emerald Sea. We are going to be having that episode on the 26th of April 26th. So I guess that is 4 weeks or 5 weeks from today.
All right. One weird thing is, like, it's pretty impossible to get this on audiobook. Like, the audiobook exists, but they don't sell it on Audible.
Is that because of the Kickstart stuff?
I read, I don't know if this is true, but I read that it's because Sanderson doesn't like the terms that Audible offers specifically.
Oh. Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Doesn't like the cut that they take, but that just, like, so there's, I'll be able to get it. I'm not really worried. It's just, I thought it was interesting.
Extra step, yeah.
Extra steps, and can't use my favorite app to listen to it on, which is, ruinous to me.
Well, damn it, Brandon.
Yeah.
You greedy son of a bitch.
Yeah. Seriously.
22 million on Kickstarter? That's wild. That's wild. What? Someone please explain to me why he has to crowdsource? Why one of the most successful authors of all time needs to use Kickstarter? I don't understand.
He doesn't.
I don't get it.
He doesn't need to. He just realized that people will give him tens of millions of dollars because they think he's cool. And so he does that now.
Scott, I guess so. I mean, more power to him.
If we could create a Kickstarter that would make us $20 million within the next year for something that we haven't done yet,
I mean, yeah,
then we would do that. Yeah,
sure. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I'm not knocking the man. I just don't understand.
I know.
Crowdsourcing and pre-ordering. Yeah, I guess it's just a way to pre-order a book, because it's like all these books are still being published through a publisher, right?
I wouldn't be surprised if at this point he just becomes a publisher. Like, that's what I would do. He's probably made like $100 million or something. At this point, I would just start a publishing company and just keep all of the profit, right? Like, what?
Sure.
Why would he give any money to a publisher at this point?
Yeah.
Like, that's the smart thing for him to do, right? Oh, he publishes the books himself. He's ahead of me. Half the podcast next time is going to be us talking about Sanderson's business acumen.
So he made his own company. Well, that's great. Good.
He's a genius.
I mean, he is. Like, yeah. Look, setting aside like his talent as a writer to write good stories, like he's has very good business acumen. Yeah. Like, clearly.
Yeah.
Like, so this book that we're about to read was published by Tor. Someone help me understand.
Maybe he just started it recently. I don't know.
Maybe.
So just people in chat, correct me if I say something incredibly wrong here. What I heard was that he literally wrote this book like just for his wife as a present, because that's what you do when you're Brandon Sanderson. You just write a novel for one person in your free time. And his wife was like, you should publish this though. And he was like, really? Are you sure? And she was like, yeah. Is this true? Am I saying total lies?
Correct. I feel like I've heard this story too.
Okay. Which makes it kind of a fun background for a book, right? Okay, that's absolutely correct.
He published it himself initially, then sold the rights to Tor after his initial run. It's genius. He takes all the money from all the huge fans. They're going to buy it right away. And then he sells it to a publisher for more money.
and now they're just making no profit because they're selling it after the initial rush for paperback prices. Genius.
My God. He's too powerful. All right, we got to end the show. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. If you are listening to this via the audio file, I think you'll have missed a lot of the weird context of the way this this conversation went at the last 5 minutes. But you should hang out with us live next month. We're going to be talking about Brandon Sanderson. Everybody loves him except that one guy that wrote that article, but we don't have to talk about him again.
No.
And so we're going to be talking about Brandon Sanderson, and maybe we'll spend a good portion of the episode diving into his business prowess. I don't know.
Yeah, that'll be great. Yeah, so come join us next week. And if you like what we do here at Doof Media and you want to see more of it, then please head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/Doof Media and consider donating to support our organization. At any available level over there, you'll get access to the ability to vote for books, these books that we talk about each month, as well as a bunch of other cool exclusive features. So please check it out.
Yeah, and I just want to say here, I'm very happy for this Sando heads. What? Sure. But the Master and the Margarita has been the runner-up in our poll for like 6 months or something like that. So join Patreon and help the Master and the Margarita, a book that I've really wanted to read for a very long time. Help it get across the finish line and finally win next month. It's all up to you.
Please.
That was the saddest please I've ever heard. Please clap.
Please clap.
All right, folks. That's going to do it for us. If you have any questions or comments or just want to reach out, you can always find us on Twitter at Doof Media. Email us at doofmedia@gmail.com. Head over to reddit.com/r/Doof Media and just hang out and just chat and talk about the many, many excellent business decisions of Brandon Sanderson. But until then, until we finish Tress, we will see you all next month. That was a lot of fun. Enjoy. Is April the month? Yeah, April. And we'll see you for some Sanderson in a few weeks.